Welcome to the fourth week of the webinar series, Embracing Change. We've been talking about for the last 3 weeks on the elements that help families endure family longevity and generational continuity. And we've talked about communication, we've talked about trust, we've talked about family dynamics, we've discussed preservation of wealth, harmony and unity, and beyond. And today we're going to take this to the personal level. We've been hearing about longevity, we've been hearing about telomeres and all kinds of testing that's being done to see how old are we and what can we do. So today we're going to talk about what's possible. And with us today we have Mickra and Dan, two of the world's experts in the space of human systems. They will talk about age rejuvenation, they'll talk about the science of epigenetics and human enhancement, performance. So for the first time, even for the Qineticare families, they will hear Dan and Mickra. And welcome Dan, welcome Mickra. Thank you very much for the generosity of your time, all the way from Sedona. So welcome, let's let it roll.
Thank you so much, Feisal. We're very honored to be with your Qineticare family and to share what we're doing in really a very sort of exciting and advanced lane for where we're going as humans. And we're thrilled to be here.
This is awesome.
So, I would love if we could create a bit of coherence among everyone listening. And, I do a lot of work in performance breathing. And as we all know, breath is the foundation of the human system. And everything rides the breath: consciousness, our health, our well-being, the way we look at life, our perceptions. And so if we could just take a few breaths together, and I'd like to walk you through, the performance breathing. So we all know that we're designed to breathe through our nose and to take in very soft and still air down into the belly. And so if you would just, if you feel available to close your eyes, everybody close your eyes, and let's take in a breath to the belly, really soft, really smooth, really gentle. And inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again. Thank you. When a group moves into coherence, the mind opens and there's a stillness that allows the human system to really process through multiple dimensions and layers of the human being. And so thank you for doing that. So I'm Mickra, and I'm co-founder and CEO of Apeiron. And our corporation it means limitless life in Greek, because we believe that the human system is a limitless system that is capable of anything it chooses to create. And so we have an ecosystem that really informs a new paradigm of health and well-being on the planet. And we're working toward global change in that regard. And it's basically that the human system is a complex system, and medicine and health have generally looked at it as a complicated system where, especially in the West, where a symptom pops up and we give it a pill. So a pill for an ill, so to speak. We don't see it that way at all. We look at it the way your Qineticare family sees it, as an entire human system. Oh, it says that the sound may not be so good. How can we?
Let me check. Go ahead, keep talking.
Okay. So as we look at the complicated system, or the complex system of the human, what we realize is that everything matters. And this is basically epigenetics. Epigenetics is the how nature and nurture actually interact. And it recognizes that every input to the human system matters. And so how we interact with our environment, how we interact with our families, all of our relationships, everything we put in our mouths, everything we think in our minds, just, all of those multimodal interactions really inform how our health and well-being sets up. And so we wanted to start with that because it's so important to recognize that to fundamentally change the way we stand up as humans in a thriving and flourishing way, we really need to create a very big change in the way we look at our health through that complex system. The leading causes of death, the top 10 leading causes of death, are all lifestyle related. We have heart disease, cancer, accidents, stroke, diabetes, kidney disease, suicide, Alzheimer's. They're all lifestyle driven diseases. And they're all things that we can actually prevent, never moving into a state of disruption or disease where, we're dying broken and addled. It really makes no sense. And so we come at the human system through a lens of precision performance. We're in a time, a new era of technology advancements and new scientific discoveries that we've never had access to before. And so it's an exciting time, to bring all of these things together and to look at what's really possible for the human state. Right now we spend a lot of our time looking at the 20% of people who are actually very sick instead of focusing on the 80% of people who are incredibly healthy and keeping ourselves healthy and thriving so that we're contributing. When we look at what's coming from a possibility perspective in human enhancement, we're going to see physical enhancements, cognitive enhancements, and, really in essence, a shift in consciousness that is going to allow us to really value our health, our well-being, to honor and respect what we're capable of. And then, the exciting new advancements in age rejuvenation are truly incredible. AI in health and wellness is going to bring about so many things that we right now can't see, and again produce things that are going to be quite life-changing for us. So yeah, I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Stickler so that he can go into some of those things with you.
Yeah, I want to first kind of frame things around our thinking process with the human and health in this entire biosphere, this ecosystem. We've been in this paradigm of looking at the human system as very linear, very complicated when you think of complex versus complicated thinking. And linear means, you take input A and it equals B, or you take A plus B plus C and it equals D. And the problem that we've found is that the human system is complex. And complexity does not follow linear patterns. Complexity implies that a system is adaptable, and so it will change over time, and you will not necessarily repeat the exact same response based on identical inputs each time. So this is the concept that we use when we're looking at the human system. And I think we're looking at major shifts in the focus of how we treat based on this. I mean, our biggest thing right now is that, everybody is in fear of this COVID-19. And really that's something that we shouldn't be in fear of. We should be prepared for anything like that. And that's what we call the anti-fragile human. So creating a state where you're adaptable and reflexive to any challenge that's put into the human system is the ultimate goal. I used to be a trauma surgeon, and I would see the people that would come in that really had that robust anti-fragile state, and they would bounce back very well from trauma. Whereas others that did not have that state were the ones that ended up prolonged care and even death. So that's been an important aspect for what we do. The adaptability of the human system that we talked about is really key with epigenetics. Epigenetics, our DNA is the smartest molecule that I've ever encountered. And it's whole goal is for our human system to thrive. So it will constantly assess environment and make changes in gene expressions in order to create that. I mean, even as simple as the foods we eat. I mean, we don't look at foods as just calories or macronutrients. We look at foods now as bioactive nutrients. What does the food inform our DNA to change expression in order to create? And this is a whole new concept for a lot of people in the medical world, but it's really important to keep that in kind of perspective. We also look at humans as not being sick or healthy. We have a whole new way of looking at this because the Greeks had initially put this together where they really focused on the system in homeostasis with the environment. And when the system was not in homeostasis, it was considered unbalanced. So there was some aspect of the human system that was out of balance that created illness. And so what we do is we don't even classify people according to disease diagnoses. We focus on really what are the symptoms and what can we do to change the expressions of this human system to create a thriving state. So we take our clients through homeostasis, optimized, and enhanced, because enhanced is a new category that we've been able to really tap into. I mean, we're at a point in human history where for one of the first times we can actually take the human system beyond what it's naturally capable of. So it's a very cool time to be living this. We're also very data driven, and this is the key in complex systems, is the more data that you have on the human system, the higher the probability you can guide that system into a better state. And what I mean by that is we don't have exact science in medicine, and that's the nature of a nonlinear aspect, is that we do not have 100% answers. We have probabilities. And the way to get to higher probabilities is to have more data. So when we look at clients, we're looking at genetics, we're looking at epigenetics, we're looking at labs, we're looking at cognitive testing, we're looking at brainwave functions, we're looking at body composition, we're looking at human movement, we're looking at how the neuromuscular system responds. So I'm going to go through the different forms of enhancement that we have available to us right now. One of the first ones is physical enhancement. How can we enhance the physical capabilities of the body? And this is something that a lot of people aren't real familiar with. I mean, when they think of physical enhancement, they think of bodybuilders, you know, the big muscular guys. And what we're looking at is, do you have adequate muscle mass that will help you to keep a thriving, healthy system as we age? And with this, we have new categories of interventions. One of the greatest ones that we've run into recently is peptides. So peptides is it's a really interesting category, because what they've done is they've taken proteins from the human body, sequenced different little sections of those proteins that have very specific functions. And the great thing about the peptides is the body will respond to peptides. That means it's not reacting. So when we take in food, when we take a supplement, when we take a medication, the body reacts to it. It doesn't respond to it. And there's a lot of off-target effects. So you may be going after this one effect, but you're going to get a cascade of other effects that can occur. With peptides, we don't have that. And this is really an amazing category of interventions that we have. We also have some research molecules. Some people will refer to them as SARMs, selective androgen receptor modulators. And these will target receptors specifically to create a response. The SARMs that we currently use will target building muscle and bone, but not have the androgenic effects of something like testosterone or growth hormone, something like that. So the peptides and the SARMs are really amazing for muscular enhancement. And we're also using neuromuscular stimulation to help boost muscle. The next area I want to get into is human cognitive enhancement, and this is a really it's a category that's really exploding with technology and interventions. Again, peptides can boost this. Here we have peptides that can boost the learning and memory in the brain by increasing synaptic connections, increasing dendritic growth in the brain. We have categories of technology where the traditional category has been neurofeedback. And now we're getting into categories of neurostimulation where we're using AC current, DC current, transcranial magnetic stimulation, even using near infrared laser technology to boost cognitive function. And we're getting good results with that. We're looking at things like audiovisual entrainment. This is something that was not well validated for several years, but now we've developed the testing that can now test and show that this is actually creating some type of response in the brain. We can change brainwave patterns with it. And we can monitor things with hemoencephalography, where we're actually monitoring blood flow to regions of the brain.
And what's really important about this aspect in particular is, life creates an expression in our human system. And, if you look at the contrast between a child who is planned and nurtured and growing up in a loving family, and a child who is neglected and left basically without love, the expressions in the brain and in the nervous system of those two individuals are very, very different. And so with precision data, with technology and this very individualized evaluation, we can actually see how life has expressed in your body. We can put sensors on the nervous system and see if you're spending all of your time in a chronic state of stress. And in that chronic state of stress, what happens in the brain, the signals are saying something's wrong, something's wrong, something's wrong. And so it affects sleep, it affects our relationships. And when you get your own data, so you have your brain mapped and you have your nervous system mapped, you really then can target specifically with these relatively new interventions to create a quick and long-lasting change in the system, to restore the brain waves to a thriving, beautiful state where you activate your executive function when you need it for creativity and to do projects, and where you relax into turning the system off because you've pushed it a little bit too hard. It's this agile movement of the human system because you have a high level of interoception of what's going on inside of you, and you're able to just automatically transition in and out of states. And this is one of the biggest powers of precision data, where you're seen as a unique individual instead of a group population.
So one thing I do want to bring up, though, we talked about the data being so important in the assessment of the current human state. The other thing that we really focus on is the dynamics of the system, because as I talked about, the human system is highly adaptive. So a good example of this is when somebody has not been very active, not eating a good diet, and they decide they want to go and lose some weight. So they will start dieting, they will start exercising, and for 3 months, they'll lose, 10 to 15 kilos and feel great. They'll continue doing the same eating pattern and exercise the next 3 months, and they don't lose any weight. And they get frustrated and they say, well, I'm doing exactly what I did before, and yet my weight isn't changing now. And this is the adaptive aspect of the human system. We have what we call familiar zones for our body. And this is the beauty of stress as well, because in the familiar zone, the body is adapted to function well within that zone. And when we stretch outside of that zone, we create stress in the body. But that stress is a good thing because that stress induces the body to adapt, to create new emergent traits that will help that body to thrive in a different environment. Because when we're stretching outside a familiar zone, it's a new environment for the body. And the person trying to lose weight has been venturing out of that familiar zone with the exercise and the new eating patterns. But now, after 3 months, that familiar zone shifts upward. And suddenly what they're doing is not putting any stress on the body. They have to create a new stressor in order to create adaptation, change, and the development of emergent traits. So we really emphasize that. And with that, we always will look at ways to measure whether the body is responding in a positive way or not. One of the things we do is we have wearable technology that we utilize that can monitor resting heart rates, stress levels, sleeping patterns, even oxygenation at night. All of these things can be monitored on an ongoing basis with people, and wearable technology is so ubiquitous throughout the world right now, but very few people understand how to implement kind of looking at how it affects the human system and whether it's a positive change or not. And this is something that we train our clients in this process. So the next thing I want to talk about is human enhancement of consciousness. This is one we get a lot of questions about. So I was speaking at TransTech in San Francisco last year, and I was talking about cognitive enhancement, boosting cognitive function. And one of the questions that came up, I asked the crowd, I said, are you for possible gene editing to enhance human intelligence, human consciousness? And majority of the people in the room, and this is a very progressive, tech-friendly room, they were not as excited about that. There was very few people that actually raised their hand that felt that that was okay. But when I said, okay, if a child has a birth defect and it's in the womb and we can correct that birth defect with gene editing, is that okay? And most of them agreed that that was okay. Well, one of the best ways to solve world problems is to really have better problem solving skills, and enhancing the human intelligence is one aspect of that. But I said, you know, we could enhance human intelligence and create a human that can problem solve better, but we could also enhance EQ. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the intelligence alone, but also the emotional piece of it. After we talked about that, the majority of the room actually had shifted their thought process around enhancement tools that are being used. So getting into consciousness modalities, we're having a really great success and seeing a lot of really good research on entheogens, which are plant-based molecules that create consciousness shifts in the brain. And what I'm talking about here are things like ayahuasca, ibogaine, psilocybin from mushrooms. And these are creating some pretty massive shifts in consciousness with people. There's a lot of research being done at Johns Hopkins and other prestigious universities that are looking at the impact of these. And unfortunately, right now, there's a stigma associated with them, and it's holding them back on becoming more public access. But I think that's going to shift in the next couple of years. We've also got some synthetic entheogens to work with consciousness, which would be things like LSD, MDMA, ketamine. Those are also being used quite extensively in research. The ketamine is actually available here in the United States for medical practitioners to use. And I think we're soon going to start seeing the MDMA start to come around as well. But even simple things like meditation and breath work, these are things that can enhance consciousness as well. we're also working with brain stimulation. You want to talk about any of the?
Well, I think, I think if we go to what's really important, and I know that in this webinar series, you've talked a lot about the interior of the human, how the thoughts affect the mind and the health. And, really, if we all are focusing in on our inner stillness and listening to our inner guidance, we really know how to be healthy. We really know how to live our lives in an effortless way. We don't age as much when we're not in the mind and stressed. And, when the brain goes off track due to trauma or due to really just life experiences that are challenging, we have an opportunity to actually intervene in the brain to really bring it back online. And this is where all of the new strategies for electrical stimulation and things are benefiting us. One of the things that I'd like to say is, we all tend to judge things through our lenses, through the lenses of our cultural editors who teach us, what is right and wrong and what is good for the human system or not good for the human system. And it's interesting to say, what if there may be things available to us to be better human beings, to be healthier human beings, to be more caring human beings? And can we open ourselves to just simply being curious about those things, as opposed to finding them to be inappropriate or not really beneficial? There's a question on IQ and EQ. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so question on EQ and IQ. So IQ is intelligence, and this is basically a measure of, I guess it would be functional skills of the brain processing, whereas EQ is things focused around empathy. What else would be categorized in that? Compassion, empathy, caring. And so there's a big push right now with boosting not only IQ, but also EQ simultaneously, because you don't want the people with the super intelligence to have a kind of a psychopathic mindset. So the EQ helps to buffer that. Now I want to get into really what most of you are probably excited about is age rejuvenation technologies. And this is an area that we've been really focused on over the last couple of years. I actually started down this path about 7 or 8 years ago. And it's amazing what I have seen come online since I started doing the research on this. And we've started implementing a lot of these age rejuvenation protocols. And to clarify this, age rejuvenation is not a matter of slowing the aging process. Age rejuvenation is about actually reversing the aging process. And this is a concept that a lot of people are really thinking that is in the realm of science fiction. But in September of last year, there was a study published by Dr. Fahey and Dr. Horvath, where they were actually able to show over the course of a 1-year period that the epigenetic age, and epigenetic age is a new methylation test that Horvath developed to predict a person's age based on the methylation patterns of their DNA. So these are really epigenetic marks that we're looking at. And he found patterns that equated to different age groups. With their 1-year study, they were actually able to find that they reverse aged people by epigenetics. This was groundbreaking for the age rejuvenation industry. This was the first time that someone was able to show that age could be impacted in an age reversal way. This was not slowing of aging. This was actually showing that the marks reversed. And this isn't anything new. I mean, we have animals we have good examples of animals around the world that, I mean, they're based on the same basic proteins we are. So the code of life, the A, T, C, and G of the DNA, these are all life is based on these. So if we can see an example of it in some aspect of life, then it's possible in every aspect of life. So every creature has that capability somewhere within them, or can be, that can be created in them. So we see things like the Greenland shark that doesn't age at all. The Greenland shark at 500 years old is not any different than a 50-year-old Greenland shark. And we have aspen groves that are just, they've lived for centuries, and no issues with aging in those. We also have a reverse aging jellyfish that will actually grow to an adult and then go back to pupal form. So we do have these really amazing examples in nature that show that this is possible. So what interventions do we have right now that we can start utilizing in order to help move this process of age reversal? And there were basically 9 major categories or hallmarks of aging that needed to be targeted. So it's not going to be one pill or one intervention that is going to reverse age the human body. We need to look at many aspects and put them together in a comprehensive plan in order to create the age rejuvenation. So when we look at this, hormone optimization is one of the key categories. So we, as a human being, we tend to deteriorate in our physiology, and some people feel that this is a programmed aspect of aging, so that our genetics actually carry a program that cause us to age and die. And then we also have the other group that says we're just a machine that gradually breaks down in process. As exposures, as we go through life, pieces break down. The answer is that it's both of these. And so hormonal optimization is key, because this is really a programmed aspect where we lose the youth creating hormones of the body, such as testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, growth hormone. All of these are hormones that will gradually lose over time, and they create, it's a butterfly effect. So when you get that small impact on those hormones, it has a huge impact on the rest of the physiology. We also have this process called senescence, and senescence is where cells that can no longer divide, so they're damaged cells and they no longer divide. And normally when we're young, these cells will self-destruct, and they will destroy themselves. We lose the ability to do that as we age. And senolytics are drugs that will actually inform these cells in the body to self-destruct. This has been a huge impact in the aging process. We're seeing this in the labs and in clinical trials right now, where these drugs are being highly effective for age reversal and rejuvenating a system that is impacted. We're seeing it with people with kidney disease and heart disease, that when they get the senolytics, their organ systems actually improve, because these cells sit in there. They're not able to function like normal cells, but they will take up resources that the body uses, and they also secrete toxins that cause the body to deteriorate. So getting rid of these senescent cells is really key, and we have some really amazing medications that have been available for quite a while, a couple new ones that have come on the market, but right now we have about 6 or 7 that are able to be used in human trials. Some of them are actually supplements, such as quercetin, but we also have peptides, and we have medications that have been used that have worked really well in those categories. Mitochondrial health, mitochondrial biogenesis. How do we get the mitochondria to be healthy and keep rejuvenating over time? You know, the mitochondria carry their own DNA. It's not the same DNA that we carry in the nucleus of our cell. And they are interdependent with the cellular process, but over time, their ability to maintain integrity of the DNA deteriorates, because it's not protected like the DNA in our nucleus. And so they get damaged by free radicals and other impacts to the system. But we're now able to find things that can rejuvenate the mitochondria, actually improve on their health. And this is another big category. mTOR inhibition. Okay, now this is a big word, but mTOR inhibition is basically what we get when we do prolonged fasting. So prolonged fasting is one of the lifestyle characteristics of age rejuvenation that we know for sure actually rejuvenates the body. And the fasting that's required to do that is fairly uncomfortable, and it just would not make for a very pleasant life to experience life in a constantly hungry state. But what we've found is that we have ways that we can block that mTOR through medications and supplements, interventions that actually have the effect on that. And this has been another category of medicines that has been highly effective in rejuvenating the human body. NAD is very popular right now, and this is something that has really created a lot of controversy on top of a big industry for the supplement world. But NAD is something that deteriorates over time in the body, and this is is basically an energetic molecule of the body. It is designed to keep the body young and healthy, and as we lose it over time, it contributes to the body gradually deteriorating. So there's been a lot of research in how we boost the NAD levels, and there's quite a few processes for doing that, but as of right now, we don't have a definitive answer on the best process for doing so. The other thing we look at is telomeres, and telomere loss. We don't know 100% that telomere loss is what causes aging. We think that telomere loss may actually be a consequence of aging. It's like gray hair. Gray hair doesn't cause us to be old. Gray hair is a consequence of being old. But we do have medications and interventions right now that have been shown to rejuvenate telomeres. I know Liz Parrish from BioViva, she developed a gene to be inserted into the DNA that boosted her ability to create telomerase, which is an enzyme that adds length to the telomeres. And let me explain telomeres. They're these little tails at the end of our DNA. And every time our DNA divides, these tails shorten a little bit. And we get to a certain point where these tails get so short that the cell can't divide, and thus the cell becomes senescent. Like I talked about, these cells that are just sitting there that don't function anymore. And so there's been a great deal of research on how we can have the body add length to those little caps on the ends of the DNA. Some people like to compare them to those little tabs on the end of shoelaces that hold the shoelaces together. And as they shorten, the shoelace will fray. And this is essentially what's happening with the telomeres. But we have seen with Liz Parrish, she inserted the gene to make more telomerase to add length to her telomeres. And it's actually created a rejuvenation process in her. And Harvard has been studying her her biometrics, so her muscle mass, her aging markers, and seeing really an amazing effect from this. So we'll see where that goes at this point. We also
just a quick question, Dan. I know you're going to go on and the telomeres versus, how do you say it again? How do you say
senescence?
The one senescence? Yeah. So I was at a family office event, and I was offered to have infusions in Kuala Lumpur in that space. So now, if you don't have any specific, prevailing ailment, would you recommend that just as a reversal and as a defense, or what would be your way forward?
We all have a prevailing ailment called aging. And it's never too soon to really start that process of enhancing the system to protect us from that process of aging. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but what's interesting is that it was a German doctor, but he was executing in KL due to obviously, you know, the approval. So that means that this is not still okay in the Western world. Is that correct? Is that
Well, you know, most applications for human use require really good studies and prolonged studies. The problem with aging is by the time we have the evidence in the studies, we're going to be old and dead. The process takes too long to study in humans to see the effect. Now we're starting to get technology that can test that, like epigenetic age, where we can see reversal of aging markers based on this stuff. But we don't have the informed long-term study that can tell us for sure that this is going to work. I mean, age rejuvenation is really in the world of what we call the N of ones. This is not going to be mainstream in any short time period. This is for the people who say, yes, I believe in the science, I believe in these things, and I'm willing to take the risks to do these interventions, and even without the prolonged human trials that will prove that. So we have animal trials because animals have shorter lives, and we can study that, but that doesn't always translate well into humans. So we use a lot of bioinformatics and sense making now when it comes to age rejuvenation. So, you know, even randomized controlled trials are going to be flawed in some way, and they don't take into account the context of each human system. And the whole process of age rejuvenation, though, is going to be in kind of small facilities that are doing this in very small numbers. You're not going to see a large uptick of this until we start seeing the impact of those smaller clinics that are implementing this. But right now we're running into a lot of regulatory patterns in the US. I mean, we're coming up in November on limitations on stem cells and exosomes, which are huge parts of age rejuvenation, and showing good evidence, but not strong enough evidence for the FDA to allow clearance here in the United States. But, you know, this is up to the individual to make a decision as to whether they trust the person they're dealing with, they understand the science of it, and they understand the risks of it. But age rejuvenation is something that can be tapped into by most people at this stage.
all right? Thank you. I've got a question regarding what would be your advice on dealing with trauma? You know, even to the impact of whether it's a job loss, whether it's, I mean, you know, a divorce or any of that kind. What would be, I know we're talking about the other direction, but how about from a defense perspective or offense for that level of trauma? Because remember,
Yeah,
we control two things: the meaning we give to everything that happens and our response. Now, obviously, the best way is to shift the meaning, but for those who are still not able to do that, what would you recommend?
Well, I mean, that's one of the concepts we really focus on with our anti-fragile program and creating that resilient human being, and mindset is the number one piece of that. I mean, all the pieces have to count, but mindset is an enormous piece. So really, we think external pieces of life create emotions in us, and really it's only our interpretation of those events that creates the emotion. We create the emotion. You know, a job loss, we can blame it on somebody, we can blame it on a situation, but it's still how our perception of that event and is how it impacts us. So mindset is a key piece. I mean, every aspect of creating the anti-fragile state revolves around lifestyle. It's about good sleep, good nutrition, positive mindsets, good cognitive processing, and good environmental exposure risks. So you minimize your environment that can negatively impact the system. So all these things play into creating that. And, you know, we work with a lot of special forces, people in the military, and with them, they don't train for every scenario they're going to encounter, but they train so that they're prepared to be able to function well in every scenario they encounter. And this is what we focus on in creating the anti-fragile human. We're not afraid of COVID-19 because we've prepared our bodies in a way that we know that we will do okay if we get it. And we probably have a good enough immune system that we may not get it at all. So these are all aspects of what we really encourage in clients in creating an anti-fragile system.
And you know, trauma is interesting. And, you know, when the perception is I'm fragile, something's been done to me, or my life is devastated by this event or series of events, you know, the language we use is quite reflective of where our perception is. You know, if I use the language of I'm done, I'm overwhelmed, I can't keep going, versus I can meet this with courage, and I can get help from friends, and I can really see it as an opportunity for growth, as opposed to this is the end of you know, my world or this particular situation. The language we use actually assists us to move through those events so much differently. And posture too, you know, when we tie it to the physiology, trauma really has a big impact on the nervous system. You know, when your heart rate goes up, your breath shallows, all of the signals in the body during trauma send in trouble, and they often get locked in that state. And so one of the ways we can intervene with trauma is to actually look at the mechanics of the physiology. Where is the breath? Is it short, shallow in the chest, or is it in the diaphragm? You know, how is the muscle tension in the body? Trauma creates real tension that also sends signals in chemistry that signal in trouble. And so if we look at the human system from a trauma perspective, as we get to look at our emotions and how are they flowing through our being. We get to look at our mental structures. What is our mind doing with this event? And we get to look at our physiology of how is my breathing? How is my sleep? Because we must focus on all of them. One is not more important than the other, because the fact that we're all unique allows us to all do it differently. And so we have to actually find out, how do we do trauma? And really, if you use great internal awareness, you can begin to kind of reverse engineer how you do trauma. Then, knowing that, you can actually lay in new strategies, new internal strategies, to put the body more in peace, so that the trauma is not as impactful.
So as many of, whether it's parents or family members, are aging and they're dealing with dementia, they're dealing with Parkinson's, they're dealing with Alzheimer's, what are your thoughts and recommendations on the, you know, the families that you're speaking to? You know, how would you approach that, or what would you recommend to them? Because it's a heartbreaking experience, as you know, and so please.
Well, you know, it is heartbreaking, but it's also hopeful. And this is where the technologies and the peptides can really move the marker. you know, we know that with Alzheimer's, there's an issue with deep sleep and the inability of the glymphatic system of the brain to clean the metabolic wastes of the day that have stacked up. We can use technology to assist with that. We can use technology in the brain to speed up the alpha rhythm, which is kind of the idle rhythm of the brain. And as we age and as we move into cognitive decline, those things, that alpha rhythm gets slower. So we can do brain training to actually speed up that. And when we do, people find, and also lay in other lifestyle strategies for Alzheimer's, people find that they improve. And while right now we can't completely take it away, improvement is very valuable for the family, so that the caretakers, who are often the ones who suffer as much as the one with the Alzheimer's, you know, they are in a better place because they see a little bit of improvement instead of constant decline.
When we see the lifestyle improvements with the Bredesen protocol that's being used quite extensively across the United States right now, but on top of that, I mean, if I had a relative with cognitive decline that was significant, I would not hesitate to work with some of the newer technologies, the newer medications. I mean, we've got some peptides that have shown huge dendritic regrowth in the brain. FGL, dihexis, cerebrolysine, all are peptides that I certainly would try. Brain stimulation, all of these things, stem cells, exosomes, they're out there. We don't have the trials to say for sure they're going to be great, but we also know that most of these things are very safe for use in humans. So why not try them on this group? You know, we're so cautious about experimentation in these individuals. But you know, if it were me, and I think most people with cognitive decline would be willing to try just about anything that has some evidence that it can work with little evidence of injury. So these are things, and we know the brain's highly neuroplastic. I mean, it throughout life it has the ability to grow new connections and new dendrites. It's capable of doing that. With stem cells, I mean, can we possibly even grow an entirely new neuron? Yeah, I think we can. So there's possibilities out there.
Okay, Dan, Mickra, let's, we still have 5 minutes, but I wanna ask you, what can we do without having these externals, right? Some of us are not, let's say, big on supplements or big on going in and having infusions, etc. What can we do with the superpower within us, right? At the end of the day, we all know the human being is so powerful and in such perfection that it has the ability to heal itself and thrive through all the different forms. So why don't you walk us through the next couple of minutes, just what can we do ourselves as a superpower within, right? To live and be and thrive.
Well, I think that, you know, lifestyle is always a core piece. It's the first thing we do with everybody, and we take a comprehensive approach with lifestyle. So it's sleep, stress, nutrition, environment, physical activity. All of those things they contribute to the outcome. Now, if we truly are dealing with programmed aspects of our DNA that are causing us to age, which is a prevailing concept now, then we need to look at that and say, are there things external that we need to do on top of that? You know, I'm a firm believer that we can create just about anything we want with our brain. We just haven't learned how to tap into that yet. And until we get to that point, you know, I think we can make substantial inroads into creating health and rejuvenating the system through internal modalities and lifestyle. But right now, I do think that the technologies are a nice enhancement on top of that, and we wouldn't have the ability to create them if it wasn't meant to be. So I think we've been given this ability to look at these things that we can add to the human system.
And you know, I would say we are the technology. And it's interesting as we talk about the human as a complex system, you know, we're so incredible, and we have the capacity to change our state of being through our mind. And it's, as Dan said, most people haven't figured out how to use that spiritual technology yet to shift the physicality. It's coming. More and more people are going interior. They're connecting to the inner essence of their being, and they're creating outcomes that are stunning. And so I would say, from a practical perspective, awareness, cultivating awareness, and really curating startling presence. And startling presence means that I am embodied fully in this physical form, and I'm connected with everything around me, not separate from it. And I think that's, that's a really great place to start, because we will do things, without technology, without supplementation, without these external inputs that are astounding. And the more we all work in that way, the more quickly it will become a possibility that's much more widespread.
So in terms of life expectancy, right? So for those of us who don't, I mean, I'm a cancer survivor, so I'm kind of in a different category maybe. But, for those who are, when people ask you, how long are you going to live? What do you answer? Like, what's possible? That's always the fun number, right? But quality of life, right? And don't give me a number where I'm lying in bed and look like, and wished I wasn't.
I don't like to use a number. I just like to say, I want a choice. That's the key, because you can't say, okay, I want to live to be 150, and then at 120 you're decrepit in a hospital bed. Or when you get to 150 and you've got the body of a 25-year-old, are you okay saying that's it? So I think the fact that death is not a choice is something that I've always not agreed with. And I think if we have the ability to say, yes, I'm ready to die, or no, I'm not ready to die, then that would be my goal.
loving the experience and making the choice to continue if so. We talk about what if we did live to 500 years, and it's so beautiful to consider that, because there wouldn't be the greed to achieve and to accumulate, and to very quickly have children, and to only do one career or one contribution. You could have so many different experiences in this one experience, and how wonderful, would that be? I think what I see coming, and of course I'm very hopeful. What I see coming is more of what I call participatory consciousness, where we know that we're all of this and that we're not separate from it. And I think that when that happens, it changes everything, right? Because we no longer allow one to live in poverty, and we no longer allow one to die suffering. We no longer allow war, because it makes zero sense to us, right? Because we're not grabbing for things. And it's a beautiful state for the human to be in. And of course we can get there. So it's all very exciting.
I like to leave everybody with a scenario that we use. So picture in your mind that you've got another 200 years to live, and you're going to live those 200 years very healthy. Would you continue doing what you're doing currently? And this is very impactful for people, because most people would really shift towards experiencing life rather than going through life. And so it's something to consider that people don't think about, and it's highly impactful.
And and I'll leave you with the fact that this life is a gift. It is so incredible to be informed, to love, to share, to connect, to relate. it's just remarkable, you know, the scents, the sights, the smells, everything that we experience is so rich with beauty. And, you know, if you aren't experiencing that, I would invite you to really trust in your, I'm going to use the word divinity, trust in the fact that you are a marvelous being and you can create anything you want. You just simply send your consciousness to that creation. And of course, through a pure, loving heart, because I think at the end of the day, at the beginning of the day, it's what we are, right? Pure love. Thank you so much for allowing us to share with you. We're very grateful to be here.
Thank you very much, Dan. Thank you, Mickra, for the generosity of your time. Thank you for the sharings from 30,000 feet to the ground level. I think we went all over external elements, internal elements. I think we did the whole 9 yards. So really, thank you very much. I know it's very early for you out there, but you're early birds. I obviously know that with the meditation. So thank you, and thank you everyone for joining us. We have Senthil tomorrow to discuss how to strengthen bonds and relationships, and then Kathleen again, who's going to discuss the 8 human qualities in terms of how to thrive in uncertainty. And then a treat next Tuesday, Dr. Shafali, who's going to discuss conscious living and parenting, which is what Mickra was starting to talk about as she did the closing. So once again, thank you very much. See you all either tomorrow or soon. Truly appreciate, again, the generosity of your time. For some of us here in Hong Kong, it's late. And for others, bon appetit as you open your fast or enjoy the rest of your day. All right. Thank you. Bye.